Now you can. You can hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this regular board meeting into session. First, I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and everybody would stand. Dr. Aguilar, would you lead us in the pledge? Allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask for a moment of silence, and if we could all think of Miss Melinda Mangham, and may she rest in peace. If we could have a moment of silence and all think of Miss Mangham. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and once again read 1.2 Lafayette Parish School Board Certification pursuant to gubernatorial proclamation JBE 2020-30 and notice of instruction regarding live stream and public comment. Ms. Trosclair, our superintendent, your opening comments, please.
Thank you, President Lachele. Good evening, members of the board, staff, and everyone listening and watching from home. I would like to begin my opening comments by informing you that in-person high school graduations are scheduled for July 9th through July 11th, 2020 at the Cajun Dome. While we remain hopeful that we will be able to hold in-person ceremonies for the class of 2020, we will closely monitor and follow all health recommendations and guidelines. Each family of graduating seniors will receive 4 tickets. The Cajun Dome will assign seating per family in a well thought out and intentional checkerboard arrangement to follow safe social distancing guidelines. Thermal cameras will detect any person entering the facility with a fever, and individuals running fever will not be permitted inside. Live streaming will allow family and friends to watch from home. The graduation ceremony can be found on our website. If CDC recommendations and state health guidelines change and we are not able to do an in-person ceremony, each high school will plan virtual graduations. Virtual summer school will be held June 5th through July 2nd, 2020 for middle school and high school students. Students who will be attending virtual summer school will be contacted and given directions for receiving devices to complete summer school academic work. We have ordered the necessary technology to ensure that all LPSS students needing to attend summer school are able to do so. I am pleased to announce that 17 teachers have been selected to serve on the newly created Teacher Advisory Panel. I look forward to collaborating and learning from this group of educators as we work to move the district forward. It is important that I receive input from the folks doing the important work in our classrooms. Our introductory meeting is tomorrow morning, which will be held via Zoom. The hiring process for the 2020-2021 school year has started. We are focusing our efforts on 2 critical areas. Over the summer, we will be hiring and training bus drivers. Applications are open now, and we encourage anyone who is interested in learning more to contact our transportation department at 521-7496. We are also seeking qualified professionals for our vacant teaching and support staff positions. Anyone interested in joining our team should check our website often, as positions are posted as soon as they become available. In closing, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to the talented and dedicated educators in our district. They have faced many challenges this spring, switching to a virtual platform for lessons, collaboration, and professional development. They have risen to the challenge and gone above and beyond to meet the needs of our students. I'm very proud of the work they are doing during this challenging time. Last week, we celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week, but we celebrate and appreciate our educators every day. Thank you, Mr. Lachele.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, we'll move on to our information items. First is 2.1 finance, list of bids approved to be advertised by the superintendent. Are there any board member comments on these items? Mr. Guidry, Mr. Bordelon, is there anything you'd like to add to this, or are we good? Thank you. No board member comment? I'll move to 2.2, human resources, personnel changes for May 13th, 2020. Ms. Gardner, Ms. Thibodeau.
This is Suzanne Thibodeau, board. Good evening, and there are no introductions tonight.
No changes tonight. Thank you, ma'am. 2.3, designate Lafayette High School Building 200 as Melinda W. Mangham Hall. Ms. Mason or Mrs. Centani?
I'll defer to Ms. Mason going first on this one.
Yes, sir. Ms. Mason, you have the floor.
Unmute.
Unmute.
Sorry.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry. Do I just read this public content part here?
Yeah, yes, you can start with that and then go to your own personal comments if you would like. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, you know, we've held the moment of silence for Ms. Mangham, and I'm just going to go ahead and read this, and then like I said, I'll go ahead and add my comment at the end. This information item serves as notice to the public that Mrs. Hannah Smith Mason, District 8, and Mr. Justin Centani, District 6, intend to ask the Lafayette Parish School Board to designate Building 200 on the campus of Lafayette High School as Melinda W. Mangham Hall at the first school board meeting held without in-person attendance restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This request is being held over so Mrs. Mangham's family, as well as the Lafayette High students, faculty, staff, alumni, and other community members may attend the meeting and give public comment. Naming the building after her is to honor her strength, tenacity, and devotion to not only her students, but to the higher cause of our entire education system of teachers, administrators, and legislation. She had the uncanny ability to make each of her students feel that they were her sole cause. Yet, she educated an army of abstract thinkers and students who have gone out into the world of Lafayette Parish and beyond, believing that they can do whatever they can dream. Mrs. Mangham was a legend in her own time and a fixture at our school board meetings, even once serving as a board member. She spoke eloquently and fiercely. To walk the halls of Melinda W. Mangham would be an honor for us all. So, Justin Centani and I discussed this, and I know many of the other board members also have discussed this. And, you know, every single one of us has sat in these meetings and nervously looked over at Miss Mangham sitting in the audience when the hot topics were on the floor. And at least for me, I knew if I did not express a view that she did not agree with, I knew that she would be at the podium. So I'm going to share the floor with everyone else before I get emotional about this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mason. Mr. Centani, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the representative of Lafayette High and as someone who was not fortunate enough to have Ms. Mangham as a teacher in high school, I come from the perspective of becoming one of her students later in life. My wife had a relationship with Ms. Mangham and her daughter Liz well before I knew them. But when I got elected to the school board in 2014, Ms. Mangham certainly treated me, I think, as she treated so many others in Lafayette Parish over the years, as someone who was in need of guidance and pointing in the right direction and trying to elicit all of the potential that I may hold. And she always had this way about her of making me feel like I was the only cause in her life when I knew better, that she had 1,000 causes in her life, and she made each of them feel as if they were the only one. And for the guidance and the assistance and the advice that she has provided me over the last 6 years, I'll be eternally grateful, and I will certainly miss her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Centani. Would any other board members like to say any words about Ms. Mangham?
I'll say something.
Ms. Morrison?
I'll just piggyback on Mr. Centani and Ms. Mason. 5 years ago, when I became a school board member, seeing Ms. Mangham in the audience, and as Justin said, she had her individual relationships with each board member, and she made us feel like we were the only one. I appreciated her thoughts, her opinions on things, and she really helped us make a whole lot of good decisions with her experience. Someone so deeply rooted in education, and she lived it each and every day. She will be forever remembered for what she has given our parish, Lafayette Parish school system. She has given so much, and her legacy will live on. And I know we all want to be an educator, just like Ms. Mangham. So I thank her for her service, and Ms. Mangham, rest in peace. Job well done.
Anyone else? If not, I'll say one or two words. Ms. Mangham always let us know. I think she taught for what she said. Was it 900 years she taught in the school system? I once walked up to her, and I guess an educator and a teacher never stops teaching. And I promise you, I know I made a B in Dr. Aguilar's class back when he was Mr. Aguilar. They tell me it was hard to get a C in his class back then. So I was okay in science, history, math, very good in math, but English was not. I just refused. And I told her something one day. I said, you know, Miss Mangham, me and you could do this or whatever. She said, Brett, me and you couldn't do that. But she said, you and I could. So I don't think I'll ever use me and you again, because every time I go to say it, I think of Miss Mangham and I say you and I, which is proper English. So she never stopped teaching. She did it in a jokingly and fun way, but she got her point across. It was not me and you, it was you and I. And I'm going to miss her. And she was a big part of this school system. Like I told Mrs. Centani, my love for sports and liking LSU, I did not know she was Mickey Mangham's wife, who happened to was on the national championship team at LSU back in 58, and he caught the pass against Clemson in 59. I would have loved to have been able to sit down and have that conversation with her. And I regret not knowing that, but we're very thankful for Miss Mangham, and naming that hall after Lafayette High is something I will support 100%. I'm sure this board will, and thank you all for bringing that up. And if anybody else doesn't have any other comments, we're going to go ahead and move on to 2.4. 2.4 is facilities, information concerning 3 running tracks projects, surface and upgrade change. It's Mr. Bordelon and Mr. Guidry. I'll just go ahead and read the public comment blurb. At this point in the construction of the 3 running tracks project, Acadiana High, Carencro High, and Como High, LPSS has the opportunity to upgrade the track surfacing material. A proposal was requested from the contractor and reviewed by the project engineer for a surfacing material with a longer expected life. The product approved for the projects has a 5-year warranty and a 7-year expected life. The upgrade product has a 5-year warranty and a 9-10-year expected life. The cost of the change for the upgrade track surfacing material is a total of $117,400 for all 3 tracks. There is adequate funding currently in the project budget for this upgrade to be added. This is not an action item. It was just for information. Do any board members have any comments on this? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Everyone knows how this works. I'll read the agenda items. If you want something pulled, please say so. We'll start with 3.1, academics, discussion and or action concerning resolution 05-20-1984, Teacher Appreciation Week.
I'll pull that.
Ms. Morrison. 3.2, Administration, discussion and or action concerning Resolution 05-20-1983, National School Nurse Day.
I'll pull that as well.
Ms. Morrison. 3.3, facilities, discussion and or action concerning release and abatement of right of passage for bus and maintenance facility. 3.4, discussion and or action concerning approval of quotes for L. Leo Judy's elementary intercom replacement. 3.5, discussion and or action concerning award and contract negotiations for HVAC maintenance contract. Dr. A. 3.6, facilities, discussion and or action concerning awards of environmental consulting services contract. 3.7, facilities, discussion and or action concerning approval of quotes for annual gymnasium floor screen and recoats.
I'm sorry, President Lachele, did somebody pull 3.5? I couldn't hear.
Yes, ma'am, it was pulled.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Aguilar pulled it. Thank you. 3.8, facilities, discussion and or action concerning authorization to award Paul Bro Gym floor replacement project. 3.9, facilities, discussion and or action concerning approval of quotes for GT Linden Elementary Air Handler number 6 replacement.
Pull that, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Centani. 3.10, facilities, discussion and or action concerning budget revision and capital improvement fund for Carencro Middle's covered bus loading area project. 3.11, facilities, discussion and or action concerning approval to sell surplus portable buildings to Vermilion Parish School Board. 3.12, finance, discussion and or action concerning resolution 05-20-1981, ordering and calling an election to be held in Consolidated School District Number 1 of the Parish of Lafayette, State of Louisiana, to authorize renewal of an ad valorem tax. 3.13, finance, its discussion and or action concerning budget to actual reports for April 2020. 3.14, finance, discussion and or action concerning the grant fund summary for April 2020. 3.15 is finance also, discussion and or action concerning the sales tax collection report for April 2020. 316 is finance, discussion and or action concerning resolution 05-20-1980, right-of-way section 16 land due song. 3.17, finance, discussion and or action concerning granting authority to the board president and superintendent to negotiate and execute an amendment to the lease with Mendoza Real Estate of Section 16 property, Ambassador Ridge Road. 3.18 is finance, discussion and or action concerning an amendment to the lease with Pedro's LLC, Section 16, Ambassador Ridge Road. 3.19, human resources, discussion and or action concerning proposed plan to reorganization of staff and changes in job descriptions related thereto. 3.20, human resources, discussion and or action concerning revision of LPSB policy CCA top tier organizational chart. 3.21, superintendent, discussion and or action concerning the minutes of April 15th, 23rd, 2020, and 3.22 is approval of all action consent items. Items pulled were 3.1, 3.2, 3.5, 3.9, and 3.19. I would entertain a motion on the remaining agenda items.
Mr. President, I'll move that we approve all items except items pulled.
I have a motion by Ms. Morrison,
Mr. President.
seconded by Mr. Angel. Is there any public comment on items that were not pulled? The call-in number is 337-521-7018. We will wait the allocated time for anyone to call in. The motion on the floor is that the board approves all action consent items with the exception of the items pulled. Those items that were pulled is 3.1, 3.2, 3.5, 3.9, and 3.19.
5 seconds.
We have no public comments. Any board member comment?
Mr. President, I have a question for our legal counsel.
Okay, sir, go ahead, Mr. Santani.
Ms. Boudreau, or is Ms. Boudreau on, or is it Mr. Hardy tonight?
I see Ms. Boudreau
There.
online.
They were both going to be available, Mr. Santani.
Ms. Boudreau, then I have a question about 3.20, the CCA policy, a top-tier organizational chart.
Oh, yeah, that wasn't pulled. That wasn't pulled.
No, it was not pulled.
Yeah,
Should we be pulling? Should we be pulling it?
yes, because it should go with three. I'm sorry, I should have caught that. Yeah, pull it because it should go with the the item before it.
Mr. President, do we mind modifying the motion to exclude 3.20 so it can be pulled?
Correct. Not a problem.
Just whoever made the, the motion.
Okay.
Are you
Yes,
good with that,
yes,
Mr.
yes, I am.
The motion will read that we approve all consent items except those pulled. Those pulled are 3.1, 3.2, 3.5.
Mr. President, I think you may be on mute.
Sorry. Ms. Morrison is fine with amending her motion. Ms. Angel, are you okay with your second?
I am okay, and thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. So the board approve all consent items with the exception of items pulled 3.1, 3.2, 3.5, 3.9, 3.19, and 3.20 are the items pulled. Once again, I'll ask any public comment on any of the items not pulled. 337-521-7018. Then we'll go to board member comment.
Five seconds.
There seems to be no public comment. Any board member comment?
Mr. President, this is Kate LeBou. I just had a question for Billy Guidry on 3.17.
Go ahead.
What is the monthly rental on that property?
I believe it's 8,000.
Yes, I believe it's 8,000 per month.
And is there a reason why we need to end that lease early before August? Could we modify that agreement to let them out from August to October instead of losing that rent for the summer months?
Well, what we're looking at is the possibility of setting up our online school there. And we feel that in doing so, the number of students that we could add to the roster for that school would more than cover the loss of the lease income.
Okay, so we feel like we'll make up that money on students. Okay, good. That was my question. Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. Thank you, Ms. LeBou. Does anybody else have any board member comment? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. Motion carries 8 for, 1 against. We'll go ahead and move on. 3.1. Ms. Morrison?
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to move that the board approves Resolution 0520-1984, recognizing Teacher Appreciation Week, and I'd like to read the resolution.
Can I get a second, please? Second by Dr. Aguilar. Go ahead, Ms. Morrison.
Okay, Lafayette Parish School Board, Lafayette, Louisiana, Resolution 0520-1984, whereas teachers personify America's belief that universal public education is a key to meeting the challenges of our changing world. And whereas teachers strive to make every classroom an exciting, productive place to learn and grow. And whereas teachers reach out to foster the well-being of each student, regardless of ability, social or economic background, race, ethnic origin, or religion. And whereas teachers motivate individual students to find new directions in life and to reach high levels of achievement. And whereas teachers influence our lives long after our school days are only memories. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lafayette Parish School Board proclaim the week of May 4th through the 8th, 2020 as Teacher Appreciation Week, and urge all citizens to observe this week by taking time to remember and salute the teachers who shape the future of our children, our community, and the community of nations.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Do we have any public comment? 337-521-7018.
Five seconds.
There seems to be no public comment. Do we have any board member comments? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. We're waiting on you, Dr. Chasson. You can. Motion carries 8-4, none against, one absent. We'll move on to agenda item 3.2. Ms. Morrison?
I voted yes.
You didn't come through? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to move that the board approve Resolution 0520-1983, National School Nurse Day. And I'd like to read the resolution.
We have a motion. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mr. Elroy Broussard. Go ahead, Ms. Morrison.
National School Nurse Day, whereas students are the future, and by investing in them today, we are ensuring our world for tomorrow. Whereas families deserve to feel confident that their children will be cared for when they are at school. Whereas all students have a right to have their physical and mental health needs safely met while in the school setting. Whereas students today face more complex and life-threatening health problems requiring care in school. Therefore, as COVID-19 pandemic has emphasized the central role school nurses play in student health and academic success, whereas school nurses have served a critical role in improving public health and ensuring students' academic success for more than 100 years, whereas school nurses address the home and community factors that impact students' health, whereas school nurses act as a liaison to the school community, families, and healthcare providers on behalf of children's health and promoting wellness and improving health outcomes for our nation's children. Whereas school nurses support the health and educational success of students and children and youth by providing access to care when children's cognitive development is at its peak. Whereas school nurses are members of school-based terms, 504 IEP, disaster emergency planning to address the school population. Whereas school nurses understand the link between health and learning and are in a position to make a positive difference for children every day. Therefore, be it duly resolved that the Lafayette Parish School Board does hereby designate the day of May 6, 2020 as National School Nurse Day.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Do we have any public comment? 337-521-7018. Any board member comment? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. Motion carries 9-4, none against. We'll move on to the next item, 3.5. Dr. Aguilar.
Members of the board, with your permission, I would ask that we entertain the discussion by Attorney Hardy to give us some guidance regarding agenda item 3.5.
Can this be done without a motion? Or should we have a motion first before we go into allowing the attorney to speak? Mrs. Centanni, could you chime in on this?
I believe we need a motion, sir.
Okay, I offer the following motion to award the contract for the guaranteed maintenance contract for all facility, environmental, and mechanical systems to Bernhardt Mechanical as the highest ranked proposer as determined by the evaluation committee, subject to negotiation of acceptable contract terms.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Dr. Aguilar, seconded by Ms. LeBeau. Should we go to public comment before, or I guess maybe the attorney could be public comment.
Oh. Okay, if y'all are ready, I can speak.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Well, as y'all know, this is the second go around on this HVAC RFP, and I've had some discussions with various staff members and some email interaction with certain board members as well on this. And my concern is that the current contract will be expiring and not renewable on June 30th. And I don't know if y'all are aware of how these contracts work. They are kind of a combination of a public work and service contract, where the contractor has a responsibility to maintain all equipment, or most equipment. Some of it's excluded if it's age. It's due to age usually. But if it breaks and is not repairable, they take the risk of replacing that equipment. Because the RFP process will take longer than 30 days and thus go past the current expiration date of the contract, there will be a lapse in the maintenance of these systems till a provider is selected. And I don't think it would be legal to enter into a contract similar to this without another RFP, meaning the current contract can't be renewed as is, because it has a definitive term of 5 years with 2 optional 1-year extensions, which have both been exercised. So the only thing that could be done is either contract individually as stuff breaks, or to maintain stuff for a short period of time, or to basically enter into a short-term contract with one provider to provide maintenance only. So that's kind of the background of where I am right now on this. If y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I would go ahead and go to take public comment on that, and then come back to the board.
I will. Public comment on a phone in is 337-521-7018. And I believe we also have people in the audience who would like to speak. Let's see if anything comes over the phone line. If nothing comes over the phone line, we'll go ahead and go to in attendance. Being we have no call-in comments, we'll go ahead and go here in the boardroom. Sir, please state your name, who you're with, and make your comments, please.
Yes, Jimmy Kaiser with Star Service. Ms. Trosclair, members of the board, thank you again for having the opportunity to come before you. We're indeed interested in, we actually turned in a proposal to the RFP that was issued. This is the kind of work that we provide and do, and we'd like consideration and a fair assessment of our capabilities and abilities. We've implemented this in a number of school districts throughout Louisiana. We've got over 1,000 of these agreements in place. What's different about what we do versus what you currently have, even though they call it a fixed cost agreement, it really isn't. We maintain and repair the equipment, and so that it doesn't fail. And if it does, we repair or replace it on our dime. So just think about it. East Baton Rouge Parish Schools been under contract for 16 years, has never paid for any repairs or any replacements, not one. West Baton Rouge Schools, going on 20 years, has never paid for any repairs or any replacements. You basically are looking at a $12.5 million budget for the repair and replacement of HVAC. That wouldn't have happened under our program. We did turn in a proposal 8 years ago for the same type of arrangement. The RFP is clearly written around strict terms that the school system wouldn't be responsible for repairs or equipment. But during this course of time, you've incurred an awful lot of expense associated with repairs and equipment, and you have a large budget facing you right now. Now, what I'd like to do is pass this on to Greg Ortego, my associate, to answer any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions for these gentlemen? Any comments? You have anything to add, sir?
Yeah, my name is Greg Ortego, as Jimmy said earlier, and we're very excited to be able to have the opportunity to demonstrate what we can do when it regards to maintaining your HVAC equipment from all the schools, half the schools. It doesn't matter what we just want the opportunity to be able to show what we can do. This is all that we do. 94% of our $20 million per year revenue is around these types of contract, which we call guaranteed lifetime protection, which in 2012, this RFP is very similar to the 2012 RFP. It was written around our program. Our guaranteed lifetime protection program is what this RFP was written. It has the language in it. It's our program. We brought it to the marketplace in the 1990s. It's all we do. So with that being said, is there any questions? Please feel free.
Mr. Ortego, do you think if it's the way the contract, maybe if there's an individual here that has our contract now, is how can we have a contract that it doesn't cost us any more for repairs, but yet we're spending a huge amount of money on repairs? If that's, I think you understand what my question is. We're spending money above and beyond what we're paying for maintenance and upkeep. Would you
I guess I'm not following you. Can you accent it another way, maybe?
You're telling me that the RFP states everyday maintenance and replacement.
Yes, sir.
But yet now we're paying for maintenance and replacement in an RFP process. But then yet we're spending even more money outside of this replacing units and equipment.
Yes, like you actually have another agenda item that was pulled to replace an air handler underneath our program. That you don't have to replace that. As a matter of fact, don't replace it. I'm telling you today, we'll take care of that air handler. You'll never see an extra cost for that. So Jimmy mentioned it earlier. Right now you have $12.5 million in HVAC replacement projects in your Capital One fund. Put that back in the classrooms. Our program eliminates that. Take that money and spend it wherever you want. You don't have to replace it. We take over that equipment. You'll never have to spend that $12.5 million. That's the core difference with our program.
So I appreciate those comments, sir. Anything else you want to add before I open the floor for more public comments?
Yes, just to carry on with what Greg had mentioned. The RFP, if you read it, it's very clear that the responsibility is for the contractor to assume the responsibility for repairs and replacement of equipment. And somehow 8 years ago, there was a totally different contract negotiated, unbeknownst to us till later, for this allowance and opportunity for the contractor to shift this risk back to the customer, whereas the customer has to pay for the repairs and the capital replacements. Under all of our contracts that we have, none of our customers pay for any repairs or replacements. So yeah, the dirty little secret in the industry, folks, is you get in low and you make it up on the back end. To answer the question as to why you're paying for repairs, I'm not sure why that's the case, but other than the contract terms allow that of what was negotiated, but it shouldn't have been, because the RFP was very clear 8 years ago about what the intent was. So there's no reason for Lafayette Parish Schools to be paying for such repairs. As Greg said, we'll take those on.
Appreciate the comments. Thank you, sir. Any questions?
Mr. President, this is Kate LeBou. I just want to thank Star Services and Bernhard for putting in their RFPs and submitting them for our consideration. I think if there are issues with the prior contract, I think this is now our opportunity to renegotiate those issues and walk into this new contract with a bit more knowledge and ground and standards. And if we aren't able to make a contract with those negotiations, I would just ask that everybody, stay in touch and keep informed with us so that we can move forward with the best contract possible with the best intentions for our school facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBou. Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Broussard.
Mr. Broussard
We
is on.
cannot hear him.
Mr. Broussard.
Can you unmute?
All right, I got it.
There you go.
Yeah, how can you can guarantee us that you can replace what's on the table? I've got what's on there now for some equipment that's 30, 40, maybe 50 years old.
We've done this for thousands of agreements, over 50 industrial plants. We're in over 100 schools, and this is what we do. We maintain it so it doesn't break, and if it does, we repair it, replace it on our dime. And that is what we do. How we do it, well, it's quite involved. It's very proactive maintenance. We replace components before they fail. Call our references. That's what I would encourage you to do. In our proposal, we have a list of references that asks for 25. We've got many more we could share with you, but we just provided the 25. We've got local references. Ask them if they've paid for any repairs or replacements, and they haven't. We've had these contracts in place for many, many years. I don't know what else to tell you other than to call the references and verify what I'm telling you is true. But this is what we do. We keep the equipment like new by constantly changing out equipment.
We'll go ahead and move on. If there is anyone.
Yeah. One other thing along that, we've got thanks, Greg, for reminding me of that. We've got a 98% retention rate among our existing contract base. Once people join up with us, they don't leave us, and that's a testament to the program. Again, call these school districts. Warren Drake of East Baton Rouge Parish Schools, superintendent over there. Hollis Milton, superintendent of West Feliciana Schools. I could go on, and they'll tell you that we're their contractor of choice, and that we have, delivered what we said we would deliver. I don't know what else to tell you other than that. That is what we do, and that's the service that we provide.
I have a question.
Ms. Morrison has a question for you, sir.
So within your contract, this is in the contract that you don't charge extra for these replacements and repairs. And if there's some type of cap, like it costs more than you would allow to replace or repair, there's no, whatever it costs is within your contract, and
correct.
There's no extra money spent.
That's right. If a chiller goes out, it's on us. If a boiler goes out, it's on us. We do this routinely. Again, let me say it again. East Baton Rouge Parish Schools, been under contract for 16 years, has not paid for any repairs or any replacement of any HVAC equipment. And same as West Baton Rouge Schools. All the school districts we have, and approaching 20 years.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience have any comments? I see two other gentlemen.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. President, of Star Services?
Hold on, sir. Ms. LeBou has a question for you. Go ahead, ma'am. Sorry.
I know that when we discussed, the review of our equipment at our schools, I think there was a carve out of Acadiana had some equipment that you couldn't cover under your contract. Are there any other major issues or carve outs that you recognize that would not be covered under a contract with you?
No, nothing beyond what you had mentioned. There are 3 air handlers at Acadiana High, and they were there 8 years ago, and that was a problem 8 years ago. I'm not sure why a lot of other equipment's been changed out and that hasn't, but we see nothing else to carve out. We're willing to take on, as Greg said, the air handler that's mentioned at GT Lennon. we'll take that equipment on without having to replace it.
Sir, this is Charles Hardy. I have a few questions based upon what you're saying. Your proposal does exclude the automation system, does exclude any equipment, this is at 4.2, any equipment deemed by contractor to be in non-maintainably condition at the beginning of the agreement after reasonable inspection time. So it also excludes all window units. So I'm having trouble marrying what you're saying with what your proposal says.
Well, the controls are, we propose to do what you currently are doing with the controls. And currently Johnson Controls is maintaining your controls. And we will take on the controls up to the programmable part. So we're going to do every bit and everything that you currently are doing under the Bernhardt contract with regards to controls. With regards to window units, that's considered a disposable. Typically, the best bang for the buck for the customer is to avoid window units. If you want to include window units, we can include window units. It's a minor issue. You don't have that many window units. We've counted them. For us, we're accustomed to this. We're in so many industrial plants that have tons more window units. I know what I'm talking about. We've taken on window units if you want us to, but again, the best bang for the buck is not to include window units, and therefore we excluded them. With regards to non-maintainable equipment, when we get up on into the job, everything we saw, we were fine with. We've surveyed, we've priced. Now, if we come up on a piece of equipment that's got a dead compressor, that's a different story, obviously. But you don't have dead equipment because you wouldn't be able to have school in the classrooms. Everything we saw, we're comfortable with. And so, is there any other way I can, is that an answer to your question?
In a roundabout way, I mean, it still would not, if you're not including, if you have the ability to exclude equipment at a later date, that's not covering, I mean, this is directly coming from your proposal, it's not covering everything. So I just, you're making some comments in the board meeting that don't match what the proposal itself says.
I'm telling you, based on what we saw, to answer Kate's question, we saw nothing that was worth carving out or of concern. We're not concerned about what we saw. We'll take on what everything we saw. Again, we think it's only fair, and we put in our language that we come across a dead compressor. It needs to be a discussion. We typically don't nickel and dime. Out of all the agreements we started with school districts, we've had zero startup cost. Items that fall into this category that we're talking about. Call the references. They have not had additional carve-outs or additional costs when we started up these agreements.
Okay, I'm not questioning. I'm familiar with y'all. I do the East Baton Rouge and West Baton Rouge, so I know y'all do a good job. But I'm just reading what the proposal says versus what you're presenting tonight.
That's contract language. Again, we would love to have the opportunity to negotiate a contract with the school district. We'd love to have that privilege.
All right, I'll go ahead and ask for anyone else in the audience. I would like to say, hang on. We're gonna go ahead and let the other.
I have one other thing to say, and then I'll be done. Appreciate y'all time and the questions. If window units and the control system seems to be what we're not sure about, we surely can negotiate that things, and we'll add those things. We just typically do that for the customers. If the school system wants us to include those, that's not a problem. No modification in the price. We can handle that. That's not an issue.
Thank you, sir. I would guess y'all are from Bernhardt, sir. Come on up.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I'll wait. I'll wait till the Bernhardt reps speak. But it seems like some of my fellow board members already spoke. Is this the audience time to speak, or board member time to speak?
It was questions for the individuals that were making comments during public comment time.
All right, I'll wait. I'm going to respect the audience to speak, and then I'd like to have the floor for a minute, please.
Thank you, sir. I'll put you first up. Go ahead, sir.
Madam Superintendent, Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Ken Bernhardt, and I am representing Bernhardt MCC along with my coworker, Kevin Miller. I am a fourth generation in this business. We've been in business now for over 100 years. We've proudly worked alongside LPSS for 70 years. That's as long or longer, in most cases longer than most contractors have been in business. I'm here today to represent our company and our value proposition. I believe we've done a very good job over the last 7 years. I believe that we've adequately addressed the RFP and we've answered the questions quite clearly. I believe that scoring the RFP is also quite clear. I do not believe that anything in there is subjective. I don't remember reading anything about my opinion. I don't remember reading anything about how does this feel. They were strictly factual based questions. But I do want to bring you back to 2012 as STAR has represented. STAR did come to this town from Baton Rouge to bring what they call is a guaranteed maintenance contract. They did that and they wrapped an RFP around their contract, believing that they could come in and sell you on something real quickly with little to no competition. I'm very proud that we were able to find that RFP and we were able to respond. Over the last 7 years, if you compare apples to apples between what Bernhardt has done and what STAR has proposed, we have saved you $5.3 million. It's very easy math. If you take their proposal and you divide it over your square footage, you will come up with a cost per square foot. Okay? Then you add the additional 800,000 square feet that you have added in air-conditioned space that includes your gymnasiums and your new high school. You can come to a value that they would have charged you for that same item. Now, I tell you, we saved you $5.3 million as compared to STAR. Let's be fair. Over the last 5 years, the school board has paid for equipment that is beyond its useful life in accordance with ASHRAE standards. It's not a Bernhardt standard. It's a national standard. Okay? What did you pay in 5 years? You paid $1.2 million. So do the quick math and see the money that you've saved by going with a local company that values transparency. I'm glad that I bring transparency to the board. Some of you may recognize this and some of you may not. What I hold here is a part of our contract right now, and that is a cost plus a fee arrangement with a maximum ceiling. If we go above the ceiling, it comes out of our pocket. If we don't make our profit percentage of 15%, it comes out of our profit. I'm not too ashamed to say that we did not hit our profit percentage. We blew right through it and we continue to serve LPSS. But what I hold in my hand today is January. This is a backup documentation of every penny that has been spent on your schools for the month of January. If you want transparency, you want a document that looks like this. Over the last 7 years, our office has produced nearly 30,000 pages in documentation showing you exactly where our taxpayers' money, the local taxpayers' money, people like me and Kevin Miller's taxpayers' money has gone to. This money has been spent on maintenance in your buildings and in replacing broken equipment within its useful life. We have spent in excess of $11 million in maintenance. So it beckons the question, if you can spend $11 million on maintenance and you can propose something for, let's say $14, $16 million, how do you do $11 million in maintenance and replace $13 million in equipment for $14 million? The devil's in the details. Because we are in this business and we also serve schools in East Baton Rouge Parish and around the country, I believe it's important to look at the details, to look at your proposal. to look at what Star brings to the table. Do they make exclusions? Heavy exclusions. 1,600 pieces of equipment. You have roughly 5,000 to 6,000 pieces of equipment, but in their proposal for a lot more money, they're willing to exclude 1,600 pieces of equipment. That includes air handlers and fans. My competition would like you to believe that you don't have a lot of window units. You do. I agree with my competition that window units is not the ideal solution, but in some instances, it just is what it is. We actually in this parish have enough window units to air condition all of Southside. You have 900 tons of window units. So is that a big exclusion? You're right, it is. You're right, it is. Is it something that we should try in the future not to build into our projects? Absolutely. They are the least energy efficient and they die the quickest. We have created an entire workshop within our office to fix these window units and to replace the units that aren't worth fixing. The fans, are fans important to you in those bathrooms? They're important to me. They're important to the code. They're important to the students. Yes, fans are very important. Those are also excluded. At some point, there's a value proposition. At some point, you shouldn't be willing to pay for what you're not getting. Sure, I can come to you today and I can offer you a $30 million deal and I can tell you that all your problems are going to go away. But is it really worth it? Where is your money going? With Bernhardt, you know exactly where your money is going. With Bernhardt, every month you get about 300 pages in documentation that tells you exactly where your money's going. And let's face it, some equipment does fail and it has to be repaired and it has to be replaced. But everything, just like you and I, have a useful life. Everything has a useful life. Okay, an air handler that's supposed to last 20 years, if it's at its 40-year mark, I can assure you that it's done its duty. At Acadiana High, it's true that we do have old equipment there, but it's a testament that it's still working, okay? A person who first graduated from Acadiana High is in his 70s now. His grandchild can now go to Acadiana High and enjoy that same environment that his grandpa did or grandma did. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. I think it's a testament to good maintenance, but I'll also bring that to your attention to tell you that some things do need to change. And it's up to you whether you want to pay a contractor from out of town to come and maintain your equipment for an exorbitant amount of money so he can replace very inexpensive items. That's not high level math. That's not high level math. What Bernhardt offers you is transparency. Transparency to a fault. Transparency that is not offered anywhere in this state. We work alongside our competition in Baton Rouge. But this is the only location that we service that has a cost plus arrangement and the customer and the school board receives 100% transparency. This is the closest thing. This is a public-private partnership. In the very essence, we are your service department. You have accounting, you have safety, you have training, you have the largest HVAC service department in the city. I also would like to tell you that we are the only responsive and responsible respondent to this RFP. There's no one who responded to this RFP that has an adequate workforce to do the job. To say you can do the job with a handful of people is not accurate. When you receive 30 phone calls on Monday morning before 8 a.m., a classroom that has special needs, there's an issue. Could be a thermostat issue. Could be that somebody didn't run their operations correctly. You have a 7th grader that's sweating. You have a kindergarten class and they're hot or they're cold. If you have 30 calls in 16 locations, show me how you do that with a handful of employees. And don't tell me you bring them from Baton Rouge. Don't tell me you bring them from East Baton Rouge, West Baton Rouge, New Orleans, or wherever you can find them. That's not where they're coming from because they have obligations there too. So it's pretty simple. Do you want to get what you're paying for? Or do you want to get it stuck to you and get very little return? Very easy. It's very easy. But the devil is in the details. Please pay attention to these details. If you don't pay within 30 days, they stop service, period. LPSS ran into an issue where they couldn't pay Bernhardt for 6 months. It was $1 million. We never stopped service. We never blinked. We never hesitated. We're not going to just shagtail and run home to Baton Rouge because you didn't pay us in 30 days. But please, I ask you to go through the details, read this, and find out for yourself what's included and what's not included. What some like to call nuisance calls, okay? A teacher doesn't know how to operate her pneumatic system properly. We haven't charged anything extra for those. My competition does. That's $115,000 value. They shake their head, but it's in their proposal right here from the last time. Maybe they've changed things. Maybe they've changed their ways. If you have an issue, you can be assured that they're going to ask you to take yourself down to Baton Rouge to litigate it. It's in their proposal. Don't be sold on something that's called a guaranteed contract. Read their contract and see what's really guaranteed. See what's actually included. Okay? If you want the most bang for your buck, if you actually want to save money, if you want to use a local company, if you want transparency, I believe that the decision is rather easy. I do not believe the grading criteria is so subjective that the answer is not clear. I'd like to introduce Kevin Miller. Kevin Miller is responsible for your maintenance. He's responsible for the day-to-day activities. He's available to answer any question that you have, no matter how detailed it may be. This person knows your facilities as well as any person does. It takes years to have the knowledge that he has of your facilities that no one is going to walk in and have. He's a very honorable person. I'm very proud to work alongside him. And so if you have any questions, I ask that you ask Kevin. Otherwise, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, sir, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and go to board member comments, and that's where the board members can have questions for either Star or Bernhardt. Mr. Angel, you asked for the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I remember 8 years ago when we requested this kind of, it was new to us then, and our maintenance department was taxed to the max, to be quite frank with you. But I can see where this is going, but I still want to contribute my 2 cents. 8 years ago, we asked for this type of contract, that whoever did the work would be responsible for the equipment. It went to the powers that be at the school board office, and it came back a different contract, and which is what we have now. We're not going to replace the equipment. We're just going to do this, this, and this, and you replace the equipment. That's not what we asked for, but that's what we got. And apparently, we're asking for it again. And based on several comments, including the attorney there, it looks like we're going to end up getting exactly what we got last time, even though that's not what we really asked for. I like a comprehensive plan, a comprehensive program where it behooves the person working for us to do everything possible to keep the equipment running. Otherwise, the contract we have now, we buy it, we replace it. The incentive is the other way around. And I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Any other board member comment or questions for our companies here?
Yes, sir, Mr. Latchley.
Dr. Chasson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Let's see where to start. So, Mr. Hardy mentioned, let me ask Mr. Hardy a quick question. Mr. Hardy mentioned that board members contacted you. Mr. Hardy, what board members contacted you?
I received an email that was forwarded to me from, there was a few, Ms. Lataway was one, Ms. LeBou, and There may have been a couple others on it. I don't recall off the top of my head. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, making sure I wasn't on mute.
Okay. So the initial request was to postpone this individual agenda item based upon the subjectivity of the individual scoring matrix. Is there any particular reason the makers of the motion are not willing to look at the reasons why staff deems it subjective or too subjective, or they're just willing to bypass that?
Well, I believe the agenda item was.
Sorry, Mr. Hardy, that question wasn't for you. That question was for the makers of the motion and the second.
So, Dr. Chasson, I, on one day last week when the committee was set to meet to score the RFPs, it came to my attention that a couple of the committee members were struggling with the scoring, felt that there wasn't a clear criteria in their opinion. I did speak with staff. I spoke with Ms. Gardner as well as Mr. Guidry, and both of which had some difficulty during the scoring. Ms. Jennifer Gardner did say that she felt that it was not clear as to how to give points or percentages. I've served on some RFP committees in the past. I also know the direction that the previous board and this board wants us to go in, which is to improve our processes, not just with this, but with all RFPs. And when I spoke to Mr. Wardlaw about the score sheet and how different it seemed to be from, for example, the environmental service RFP that some of these same folks were scoring, Mr. Wardlaw did let me know that that was the same scoring sheet that was used. Mr. Wardlaw, was it 7 years ago? And I felt that the board expected us to improve that process. I did find, my opinion, that it was very subjective, and I know there will always be some subjective components in any of those things, but I do feel that there were places where scoring could have been more defined, I guess, and parameters set. So at that time, I did ask Mr. Guidry what some of our options were. He reached out, and that's how we created the agenda item to reject both proposals. Now, today we did get more information. That's why we have Mr. Hardy on the phone, on the Zoom call, as well as Ms. Boudreau. I felt it was important that you all hear some of what they shared with us today for your consideration.
Okay. I'm seeing various board members nod up and down like they're aware of what Mr. Hardy has spoke of. This is the first time I'm hearing about Mr. Hardy and the messages that he's somehow relayed. Did Mr. Hardy send emails to us that maybe I didn't read, or like?
Dr. Chasson, as board president and as board vice president, Ms. Morrison, we're often copied in correspondence between the school system and whomever as board president. And I got with Ms. LeBou and Mrs. Santani, and because there were questions, I'd spoken with Ms. LeBou, concerning the contract and the way the scoring was done. And that was my only concern, was the problems the superintendent had with the scoring system and moving forward, and whether the contract was what we were asking for and what we were getting, and if we were spending taxpayer money properly. But the only question I had was concerning the scoring matrix, rubric, whatever you want to call it. If staff had a problem with it, then we as a board need to look at what we're putting out there to grade these companies.
So if staff had a problem with the scoring matrix, then when was the scoring matrix then scored? Because I thought it was postponed.
No, this was done last week, I think.
No.
It was postponed from
Mr.
a month ago.
My question is, when was the scoring matrix scored for both companies?
After conversation today, Dr. Chasson, on a call with Ms. Boudreau, Mr. Hardy, Mr. Guidry, Ms. Gardner, myself, and Mr. Bourdlaw, it was suggested that we let those individuals turn in their score sheets to Mr. Bourdlaw, to at least have that for your reference this evening.
Okay.
Because there are different options, of course, different avenues, different routes that you could take, and that we felt you needed that information at the very least.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so that's that one. So when was this made public? Because I'm confused as to how one of the proposers is aware that they were the only responsive bidder and won the bid by 6,000 or 600,000. How's that possible?
Go ahead, sir.
May I take the?
Yes, you can.
Dr. Chasson, the comment was made by myself that we were the only responsive and responsible bidder, which is a technical legal term. Responsive is, a matter of being on time, and a matter of being responsible is being actually able and capable of completing the work in which you submit your bid for. It's my argument that it takes dozens of qualified technicians to execute your work, and a handful of technicians just won't do. So it's my argument or my suggestion that Bernhardt is the only responsible bidder.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think maybe what you were asking too, Dr. Chasson, was had the companies been notified of who had come out of the scoring system? Is that maybe what you're asking?
Yes,
If the results of the RFP had been made public yet?
No, sir. To answer the question, we have not been notified of any results.
Okay. I think maybe that's what he Dr. Chasson. I don't want to speak for Dr. Chasson, but that's what I gathered from the question.
If I may, I wanted to address one of Mr. Angel's concerns.
My next question is,
Dr. Chasson still has the floor.
Oh, my apologies.
That's not a problem, sir.
How many proposals totals did we get for this?
I think it's 2.
We received 2, Dr. Chasson.
All right, and let's see.
Now we have, Dr. Chasson, we have the scoring criteria here in the boardroom. Were we able to email that to y'all?
Yes, sir, we were.
Okay.
I just sent some messages out to try and figure out, and while I was waiting, I pulled up my email and it just got sent to me.
Okay.
So I guess the major issue here, which is not really the elephant in the room, is the total cost spent. What the RFP was meant to be versus the contract negotiated versus what we're actually paying and versus what we're supposed to pay. So who can speak? I guess that would be either Billy or Kyle. Who can speak to the original RFP or this RFP and what's going to be, I guess, required going forward? Original RFP, the huge issue that I've had and that I've relayed to many of y'all is that the RFP was supposed to be basically a full-fledged warranty. Everything's covered. And after they answer that question, I'd like to get a total cost from Billy or whatever money person can tell me what we've spent per year since the first proposer has had the contract.
So, with regards to the equipment that we replaced, Billy, can you unmute, sir?
With regards to the equipment that we've replaced over the last 5 years, we spent about right at $1,052,000. So that's over a 5-year period. So do the math. It's not. It's a large amount. It's a I mean, it's $1 million, so it's nothing to ignore. But when you consider that over a 5-year period, as a matter of fact, when in my evaluation of the responses, I added that $1,052,000 to Bernhard's response. I felt that it took that to make it more of an apples to apples comparison. So that is what we spent on replacement equipment to answer that question. What other question, Dr. Chaplin, did you have?
Well, Billy, let me follow up on that one quickly, because when it popped up on the screen when we were last, I guess, in the actual board conference from everyone, and we're going through the budget, there was a fan call units that had popped up and looked like for fiscal year 19. I mean, it was, I think just for fiscal year 19, it exceeded $1,052,000. So somebody explain that to me, because I even stopped and asked right then and there, hey guys, question, can someone please explain to me, is this not supposed to be included in the original RFP contract of the HVAC stuff? Because there were tons of stuff fiscal year 17, 18, 19. I mean, that total just for those years exceeded $1,052,000.
I'm not aware of any equipment call, or are you? I mean, I'm looking at the $1,052,000 represents the actual expenditures that the actual payments that we made. If there are amounts in the budget, maybe Mr. Bordelon, you can refer. I'm not familiar.
Billy, would that be depreciation, or is that actually dollars spent?
Actual dollars spent.
Yes, she did. Tell Kate to hold on.
Hang on, Miss LeBou. I think Mr. Bordelon is coming up to the front.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to get clarification on that.
Oh no, that's
not a problem. You have the floor, Mr. Bordelon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Out of the numbers that Billy's department generated for the air conditioner expenditures over the last 5 years, there was about $12 million of that, which was in new air conditioning equipment for existing gymnasiums. And there was even a couple of kitchen air conditioners in there also. So because those were new pieces of equipment, they weren't existing pieces that were part of that original contract. I separated those out because they were not part of the original, and they were new items. So what was left over the last 5 years was $1,052,000 in expenditures. Now, of those $1 million of expenditures over the 5-year period of time, we know that there's equipment out there that's 40 plus years old. And we know that it's way past its life cycle. I'd also like to step back for just a second to clear up a couple of things on the existing contract. 7 years ago, we put out the same RFP. Proposals came in. This was not a hard bid situation. So we analyzed the proposals. We had a professional engineer with Associated Design Group help us at that time to analyze the proposals and look at what was the best benefit for Lafayette Parish school system. The way Bernhard proposed is they were going to cover full coverage on most of the air conditioner equipment at the schools. Items that were in good shape, that were in reasonable shape, that were fairly newer, they covered that. But they also gave us a limited liability list. And the way that contract has been working is they repair, they do preventative maintenance on those pieces of equipment. But because of their age or condition, possibly that parts may or may not be available. If we get a catastrophic failure and that piece of equipment fails, we both understand that the replacement only of that piece of equipment is going to be on the school board's nickel. And we consciously went into that agreement 7 years ago. And that's the way the agreement has been working.
Mr. Bordelon, really quickly, is that not the opposite of what the RFP was?
It's not the opposite, but it does deviate slightly from it.
But here's my question. Who negotiated that contract?
The board, the staff, the superintendent at the time.
The board didn't negotiate that contract. I was not a part of the negotiating of said contract. I would have seen the difference between what the RFP stated and what the actual contract stated. I'm pretty smart. So please don't say the board. So with that being said, let me ask you again, what entities were a part of the negotiating of that contract? So which superintendent? Because we're a couple of superintendents in, I'm sad to say.
I believe that was Dr. Cooper.
Dr. Cooper, who else?
Dr. Cooper, myself on the staff, some other staff members.
Okay. Who were the other staff members, Mr.
I frankly don't remember that far back, sir.
Okay. Mr. Gidger, were you a part of it?
I don't recall, Dr. Chasson, if I was on that committee 7 years ago. I served on several evaluation committees. I apologize. I do not recall what my involvement was 7 years ago.
Okay. And when you say deviates, Mr. Bordelon, and Mr. Bordelon, I know this is a tough spot for you to be in. And I hope you understand, I'm asking pointed questions, but they're just questions. It's not that you're the individual responsible. So please understand where I'm coming from. But explain to me how the contract for that RFP deviated and who allowed that to occur? Because that sure didn't come back to the board for approval.
Dr. Chasson, tomorrow I'll spend some time, but I'm pretty sure that contract did come back to the board for approval prior to it being signed. Because a contract of that magnitude generally takes the board president's signature and the superintendent, but I will be glad to check on that. The deviation is the limited liability list, because those pieces of equipment are not covered for replacement, but they were covered for repair and preventative maintenance.
But according to who is that not covered? Because that's what the RFP, that was the whole point of the whole RFP. That's why Star and Excel and Bernhardt were going at it so hard, because they were all claiming at the time that, well, you don't do this work, well, you don't do this type of work. And they were going back and forth. And one company was saying, they're going to charge you for stuff. Another company is saying, no, we're not. And then we still get charged. So how does that then deviate? Like, who determined that the limited liability lists and the national ASHRAE standards? So going forward, every year something gets a year older, and every year something gets a year older, and every year something gets a year older, and then it goes eventually to that limited liability list. So who determined that list should go against what the RFP stated? Like, who negotiated that?
That was part of their proposal. That was something that we reviewed. We had Associated Design Group that was sitting in on this review with us, and making suggestions on whether to agree or not agree to these terms. And ultimately, we agreed to the terms that are in the current contract.
Okay, I got you. I'll go ahead and stop with that. You don't knock a company for something like that. I'm expecting to see somebody nod their head. You don't knock a company for that. It's a good negotiating tool / technique, and if you're able to negotiate that, then it's better for your company. But I thought that was the whole point of what the RFP was. That's why Star and Excel and Bernhardt argued the first go round, and they went at it back and forth publicly on the board floor. They were commenting back and forth from the actual seats they're probably sitting into the podium. And turns out we still were subject, and I guess subjective is a very loose term nowadays. I guess we're still being subjective to the same thing. So going forward, I'm sure that there's a clear motion on the floor right now. How do we be sure going forward, and I'm sure we've got some shrewd negotiators now and everybody's aware of it, that this current contract we won't have said limited liability list? Like, are the companies aware we're not allowing the limited liability list and the whole 9 yards?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, Mr. Chasson. I mean, but the proposals have been submitted. They are making proposals. Again, I said earlier, this is not a hard bid situation. Mr. Hardy may want to speak to the differences in that. I'm not sure.
Okay. That's fine, guys. That's my last question. How many quadrants? Are we still divided up into 4 quadrants, even with the new schools added?
We have the 4 quadrants identified in the RFP. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Any other board member comments, questions? We have Mr. Bordelon, 2 companies here. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Mr. Angel, you have the floor.
Of the people who scored this bid proposals, could you tell me who they were and how many years of experience, if any, did they have with HVAC?
The members of the committee are Jennifer Gardner, Jonathan Watson, Glenn Oliver, who's our maintenance supervisor. Glenn has several years of HVAC experience. He used to be a licensed HVAC installer and repair guy himself. Billy Guidry was on the committee. And we also had Tom Van Deventer, who's a mechanical engineer with Associated Design Group. I don't know Tom's experience as a mechanical engineer, but I would guess it's at least 30 years, maybe 40.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions or comments?
Who selected Tom?
I requested that from the superintendent so that we could have someone like an engineer on the committee to answer technical questions for the committee.
I got you. Thank you, Mr. Bordelon. I appreciate that. I know that's some tough questions, so I appreciate it.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Mr. Santani, you have the floor.
I specifically pulled the item about the Green Tea Linden air handler to try to rectify my ignorance about what is and is not excluded from this contract. So, Mr. Bordelon, or someone with knowledge, could you explain to me why we are on the hook for that as opposed to the contractor? Thank you.
That is one of the pieces of equipment that's on the limited liability list. That piece of equipment is approximately 40 years old, back from when they air conditioned that school in about 1980. For the last couple of years, when school gets started for the first month or so, we, as in Bernhard, has been trying very hard to get that air handler to perform the way it's supposed to perform and provide enough cooling. It provides cooling for a hallway of classrooms. And because it's not performing well, they have cleaned it. They have looked at the ductwork. They have checked the pressures in the ductwork. I mean, they have gone over and above and tried making this thing perform, and it can't. The unit cannot perform as it did when it was brand new. And because it's at 40 years old, and because it's on the limited liability list, and because we keep getting the complaints every year during the hottest time of the year, we're trying to replace the unit so that the kids during the summer.
Mr. Bordelon, I get what you're saying, and please bear in mind that this question that I'm asking has no reflection on the work that Bernhard has done, or the age of the equipment, or the need to replace it. My question revolves solely around the process by which we are selecting a contractor. Is in the RFP that we are discussing right now, is there any mention of a limited liability list when negotiating a contract?
To my memory, there is no mention of a limited liability list in the RFP.
And so, we would be completely within our rights to award this RFP to the low bidder, and during negotiation, make it perfectly clear that we intend to not have a limited liability list. Is that correct?
I may have to ask Mr. Hardy to answer that question.
I'll wait for Mr. Hardy's answer if he'd like to give it.
Anything's possible in negotiation.
I love that answer. Thank you.
Mr. President, are you finished, Mr. Centeni?
I am done. Thank you.
Ms. LeBeau, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry. Kyle, or Mr. Bordelon, how long do we have to negotiate this contract? Is there a time limit on it? Do we have to have a contract executed by, obviously our current contract ends the end of June, but between now and then, how long do we have to pursue in negotiations?
Well, obviously, we'd like to have a new contract in place by June 30th, so that there's no lapse in the work that needs to be done at the schools. I don't know that we're fixed on a time period. I'm not aware that we're fixed on a time period. But if we do go beyond June 30th, I have spoken to Bernhard and requested what kind of proposal could they give us for either a month-to-month or a 6-month or a 3-month or some kind of extension, so that at least we can keep maintenance going and emergency call-outs.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure we weren't under a 15-day or a 30-day. Okay. And my second question is, when the last contract was drafted, who did we ask to give us the first draft? Did we create the first draft as the school system, or did Bernhard create the first draft?
My memory is that Bernhard created the first draft and we had legal counsel review it the first time and possibly a second or third time. I don't remember how many times we went back and forth. I just remember Bernhard came up with the first draft and we had legal counsel review it either once or multiple times. I don't remember.
Yeah, and Kate, I had reviewed, I went back all the way to trying to find some of my file information. It's been a while, but in March of 2013, I had reviewed the contract that was provided by Bernhard. So we had gone through a lot of negotiation. I can specifically recall attending a committee meeting. I don't think it was a full board meeting, and attending multiple other meetings, whether it be board or committee meetings. And at the last one I went to, it was my understanding that they weren't going to move forward, and the board was going to try to hire somewhere around 40 technicians on its own as its own employees. Apparently, at some point, the contract did get approved and did get signed, but I did review the contract back in March, and we did go back and forth quite a bit.
Okay. And then when we did the extension, was that an automatic, or did we go back and review how we felt that first primary term had gone when we gave them another extension of 2 years? Is there any, was it just a board vote, or was there any type is there any setup of a review, I guess, at that point?
I can say the contract's not automatic. I don't know. I'll have to defer to staff on how it went about.
Okay.
It was brought back to the board for a renewal, and the board voted on the renewal. It was actually postponed, I think, twice to request this same information, but we were not able to get the information from staff based upon RFP, what was allowed, what was not allowed to be charged for, and it seeked the time for renewal, kind of like those time-sensitive issues.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other board member comment or questions?
Yes, sir. Mr. Latchley, really quickly, with both members of both proposers that are there, seeing as that this is the direction that the board is heading, are both proposers aware that with this current RFP, this allows us, and I'm assuming this is the way it should have been before, but it hasn't, that this allows us to negotiate for a contract that does not allow us to be charged or for these same items? Like this future contract will be combed over and combed through to where it will actually and truly be a fixed cost, guaranteed lifetime protection, warranty, holistic contract. Are they both aware that we are not allowing us to be charged going forward? Like, I clearly can't see them. Normally I'd look at them, they both nod somebody. Like, we're not allowing us to be charged. So anything entered into negotiations at this point with the current proposals given, that's your cost that you're gonna infer onto us, and then everything will be back in your court. There is no negotiating to come back at a later point in time, as many of the issues that we've heard of before.
Okay, I'll ask. I don't.
Can't hear.
Were y'all able to hear what Dr. Chasson was? Okay, the people from Star evidently have it on their phones. The people from Bernhard didn't. Dr. Chasson's question is, if both companies are aware that this is a fixed price, guaranteed contract, there will be no negotiations beyond what this RFP said, which evidently an RFP was put forward 7 or 8 years ago, and then it was negotiated, and you got out of the fixed costs, and some of the costs came back to us. Dr. Chasson is saying this RFP moving forward, there will be no negotiating or if you're going to replace this unit or not. It's the fixed price. The company that gets the bid or the business will be responsible for replacing that equipment. And I think that's his question. He was asking both. You can both comment. You can come up, Sir Starr, Barnhart, one at a time and answer Dr. Chasson's question. Okay, they now have a speaker in here, Dr. Chasson, so everybody will be able to hear when board members speak now. Okay. Go ahead. Okay.
Right. If I may, I did hear the question, and just to reiterate, we are prepared to cover all the equipment. As the RFP says on page 4, Lafayette Parish Schools will not be required to pay for repairs or replacement of any equipment included under this project for the term of this agreement. We bid this RFP on both occasions, 8 years ago and recently. And this is what we provide in other school districts. All this thing about this limited list and not covering this or that, that's not what we bid. Our price would be significantly different how we bid that. And the devil is in the details, and the math does add up. And just to get one thing clear, all these things that the competition is saying to scare you all about us having to come from Baton Rouge, about things that we don't cover, about charging for nuisance calls, about stopping service if you don't pay. We just recently had a school district that got 3 months behind, and we never stopped providing service. So what we have is a lot of clouded, random suggestions and things. Again, I would challenge and encourage you to call the school districts in which
Sir, I hate to interrupt, but I think we've already done the sales pitch. If we could just, I get it, but if you could just answer Dr. Chasson's question of, are you aware that this is a 100%? Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And look, I was asked to come here and speak for 3 or 4 minutes. I felt as though I didn't have the same amount of time, and I felt like I needed to clarify some things that were said.
Okay. I think, sir, we're all professional enough and adult enough to distinguish, what is being said. Go ahead, sir. Dr. Chasson's question is, are you aware that there will be no negotiation, and this is a fixed cost RFP contract to where maintenance, repair, replacement falls on the person who receives the bid?
Dr. Chasson,
Yes, I do understand that. That is very clear. It's also clear that in 2012, when we responded to this RFP, that the RFP stated that the school board would provide the contract, and we were relying on that. It would be a lot easier, and I believe that the school board would receive everything it wanted to receive if it indeed created the contract. Because the school board did not create the contract that was catered to my competition, Bernhardt was forced to offer a contract, and we did so in the best interest of LPSS. A cost plus contract rewards the contractor for doing the maximum amount of work. He gets a percentage of profit based on what he puts in. Your lump sum contract rewards the contractor by withholding service and maximizing their profit. We do understand that this is fixed fee. We have a guaranteed max. You will pay no more than the guaranteed max. But here's the deal. If there's a savings, if we as a team can come together and create a savings, you get 50% of it. I haven't seen that in any other contract, but I do understand that this is a fixed sum contract. Thank you.
I think my question would be is 7-8 years ago, it was a fixed contract. And over the last 7 or so years, it was negotiated out of what was actually bid. And I think that's where some of the questions and concerns of board members come up, and the scoring and it being skewed and so forth and so on. And I think that's where a lot of your questions are coming from, is the board votes on something, does something, and then somehow, in some way, it gets changed. And Dr. Chasson and Mr. Angel were on the board at the time. We weren't. We were here for the renewal, and I remember the back and forth on that one. And I think the point we're trying to get across is we award an RFP. We're not putting out another penny. Don't come to us and tell us this air conditioner went out. That's not our liability. That does not fall on us. It falls within the RFP, and I think that's why we went there, and I think that's where his question came from. I'll ask, does any other board members have any questions, either of these gentlemen?
Mr. Latchley, I have a question for Mr. Bernhardt. Is he still up there?
He is.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bernhardt, question for you. Would you say the limited liability, what do you call it, a list? Is it a list, guys?
Yes, sir.
Would you say the limited liability list should or should not be included as far as this RFP, as far as going forward? Now, obviously, I know you'd be a crazy person to sit here and say, well, no, I think we should be able to cover that going forward. But according to the RFP, do you think that allows you to have the limited liability list? And are you willing to, because according to, I guess, some of the board members, that we're of the notion that we won't be having a limited liability list. So let's say you are awarded this contract tonight. Are you then aware and willing to not have that negotiating tool as far as a limited liability list and everything's included? Would you say the RFP should or should not allow for the limited liability list? And are you willing to not have it?
So, thank you for the question. The RFP's stated purpose is for a maintenance contract. It's not for a capital outlay contract. Those two items are very, very, very different. I believe the school board intends to have a capital outlay project. It would state so somewhere in the RFP other than a guaranteed maximum. I believe that the limited liability list and the value that Bernhardt has presented is the best value for the school board, and it has proven to be over the last 7 years, as it has saved over $4 million in actual money. That money goes back to the school board, and it does not have to come out of any other budget, including teachers and other programs that enrich our children in this community.
Okay, but are you willing to not have the limited liability list? Because that's what we're pressing for. That's what we're pressing for going forward.
Certainly, yes.
Yeah, I'd also like to offer a substitute motion.
Can I ask a question of the individuals first?
Go ahead.
I have a question for the gentleman with star, please. Sir.
Yes, sir.
I think the question that may be on some people's minds, are y'all local?
Yes, sir. We're local.
Can you explain how long have you been in town or whatever?
We've been here since 1995. Okay. I was born on the campus of USL.
Okay.
And lived in this area all my life.
So you have an actual facility here in Lafayette manned with technicians?
We just bought just finished building, and we're moving into a near $1 million facility off of North University.
Okay.
We have the technicians needed to start tomorrow on this job.
Okay.
If I can add one thing?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you board members can see me, but this limited liability list, your capital improvement fund is this one right here. It's $12.5 million in future replacement projects. That's your limited liability list. With us, that goes away. So before they were comparing costs of what they spent since they were here, Bernhardt was in under this program, versus what we proposed. We'll take that number and you add $12.5 million. And every year that $12.5 million goes up because this list continues to grow and grow.
Okay.
And yeah, you could force that's all I have.
Okay, I appreciate it. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and go to Dr. Chasson. He says he has a substitute motion. Go ahead, Dr. Chasson, you have the floor.
I'd like to make a motion to give Star Services 1 quadrant and Bernhardt Mechanical the other 3 quadrants.
We have a motion. Dr. Chasson, do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mr. President. Mr. President.
I didn't hear who seconded.
That was Tommy, I believe.
Could he repeat the motion? It didn't come through on mine.
Dr. Chasson, could you repeat the motion for Mr. Broussard, please? It was seconded by Mr. Angel.
I'd like to make a motion to award 1 quadrant to Star Services and the remaining 3 quadrants to Bernhardt Mechanical.
Did you hear that, Mr. Broussard? Okay, and it's seconded by Mr. Broussard. Mr. Angel. We will now go back to the phone lines for public comment. 337-521-708. Can I see the motion up on the screen, please? There we go. The substitute motion is that the board awards Star Services 1 quadrant and Bernhardt Mechanical the remaining 3 quadrants. Motion was made by Dr. Chasson. It was seconded by Mr. Angel. And we're awaiting call-in comments. Time limit's up. We'll go back to public comment from the audience. Mr. Bernhardt? Please limit it to the motion on the floor that the board award Star Services 1 quadrant and Bernhardt Mechanical the remaining 3.
Hey guys, we can't hear Mr. Bernhardt.
Hang on, they'll get you going.
I'm sorry, I'll repeat myself. I do appreciate the motion, and I do appreciate the continued confidence in Bernhardt. I would like to point out that the RFP does not give that option to split it out, that the pricing is built upon all or nothing. I hate to say it that way. And to get the same value, you'd have to have the same amount of equipment. I believe it should be an all or nothing proposition, as I believe that Bernhardt is the only company that has responded that can adequately fulfill the obligations of the RFP. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Star, yes, you can comment on the motion on the floor, and then I'll have a question for Mr. Hardy when it's our turn. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, regarding the motion, we'll be more than happy to have one quadrant, one zone, to be able to prove what we can do. We are eager and ready to go to work.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hardy, if I may, I guess to look at this substitute motion, and is this allowed? And if not, how can it be made to be allowed? Or if this motion were to pass, or is this motion even valid concerning, the RFP we have out there now?
I don't think it's specifically prohibited. I'm trying to look through right now to see.
Okay.
What it's
So in other words, in negotiations after a vote tonight, in negotiations, I mean, price and quadrants and so forth and so on, that can be negotiated, correct?
Well, the quadrants are set.
Right, correct. Which one, who would get what?
I think the board, that was one question I was going to have. I think the motion should be at least clarified as to what quadrant would go to whom. That would take out some of the ambiguity on it.
Mr. Hardy, could I ask you to kind of go back a little bit? Bernhard didn't have the opportunity to hear you, so they now have the headsets, and Star has theirs on their phone. Could you kind of start again with the from the point of the quadrants? You said the quadrants were already established, and then moving forward from there. And I asked if it could be negotiated price-wise. And
I don't think it's, without digging through the RFP right now, just on the spot, I don't think it's prohibited to award separate contracts to different quadrants to different companies. In fact, Bernhard, I know Bernhard is involved in East Baton Rouge Parish, where they have a portion of the contract, as well as Star. They just got in. I believe it's just Bernhard. I don't know. I may be wrong. There's a few of them. And as far as negotiating prices in all that, everything can be negotiated. My preference would be that the board identify the quadrants to go to each of the firms, rather than negotiating that on our own.
Just wait.
Okay.
Mr. Latchley.
Yes.
Mr. Bordelon does have the different quadrants here listed if the board
Okay.
wants to know those.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any board member comments or questions? Ms. Morrison?
President,
Ms. LeBeau, Ms. Morrison has the floor. I'll get you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
We can't hear her.
Mary, I think you're muted. Not a problem.
Okay, yeah, earlier you mentioned it should be all or none. So are you willing to accept 3 quadrants or 2, whatever, and share it? Or if you can't have all of it, you don't want any of it? I'm just asking.
Hear what they're saying.
Hey guys, if there's a response, we can't hear it.
My apologies. I'll repeat. I appreciate Ms. Morrison's question and for her asking it, because I don't want to be run out of here, and I will take something rather than nothing. But I will say that we did line up to compete. Okay, and that is part of our business, and we responded to an RFP, and we would like to compete for that RFP. But of course, everything is negotiable. I would think that it would be a good idea to have one uniform contract. I do. Most people don't want to do a cost plus because they don't want to be transparent. But I believe if you're going to split this up, I think in order to, for the sake of ease, that you have the same contract.
Guys, there was a specific question that was asked, and we're getting back into the same rhetoric.
Correct. I think Dr. Chasson's right. We'll just specifically answer the questions, and that's my mistake, Dr. Chasson. I'm sorry about that.
I appreciate it. I figured you would chime in, but that's okay.
Yep. Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Latchley.
Can I let Ms. LeBeau go next? She was next, and I'll let you go right after Ms. Mason. Yes, ma'am.
Well, is Ms. Morrison, are you finished?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for asking, Ms. LeBlue.
I have a concern with doing quadrants. in the respect that we have two brand new schools on the very south side of Lafayette. I think it would be only fair if you would give those to Bernhardt. I mean, I think strategically, we can't stockpile a company with all the older schools and then give somebody else all the, I don't know how that would be a fair distribution, or how you would do a fair distribution unless you took into account the age of each facility and the equipment at each facility. I just think it's going to make things difficult if we contemplate breaking up contracts, and also would probably make it very unfair if we again awarded somebody a quadrant, with two brand new schools, and somebody else, some schools that are 40, 50, 60-year-old equipment. I mean, it just contemplates some of the numbers in our parish and realize that it's difficult to just say quadrant.
Well, I think, Ms. LeBou, y'all are not here, but Mr. Bordelon actually has these quadrants already broken up, and he has paperwork here that shows the 4 quadrants. I'm gonna ask him to bring them up to me, and I'm gonna look at them and let some of the fellow board members up here look them up. Do you have any other comments?
Just as the attorney, I'm sorry, y'all, had to leave for a second. The attorney answered the question of whether this was legal under the RFP. We are allowed to award 2 separate contracts.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think I don't see anywhere in the RFP where it's prohibited.
May I ask my question? If it's not prohibited by the contract, is it prohibited by law?
No, this is an RFP. I've seen this done before. In fact, I know it's been done in East Baton Rouge Parish. They've split it up into 4 different sections, and I believe they have 4 different contractors for each one. Star and Bernhardt being included now.
But they didn't bid it out as 4 separate. They bid it out as 1 and then awarded it to 4 separate?
Yes. It's been a while. In fact, I think the last one, the way Bernhardt got it was because one of them was fired and Bernhardt got involved and received the job.
So the fact that the definition of the project says Lafayette Parish, it's not an issue if we select certain areas of Lafayette Parish.
Well, the RFP is split into 4 zones, so it would make an easy breakdown as is.
Okay.
I have the list here, Ms. LeBou.
Thank you.
Ms. Mason, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, Timmy, I appreciate your thoroughness on this and bringing everything into discussion. But with my business hat on, I find it hard to follow that we've put out this RFP. These 2 companies have gone to great lengths to bid on the entire job, and yet we're going to change it up, totally change the playing field, and divvy up the quadrants. I don't see how these companies could. Like Kate LeBou was already saying, all the quadrants are not equal, and I just don't think that this would be the most fair way to make these companies work, and maybe it wouldn't be the most efficient use of our taxpayer money. I mean, are we staying with which number are we going with? What's the price we're paying, and how much is each quadrant worth? And I mean, to me, it seems like a whole new RFP. If my company's bidding on a quarter of the project, I'd have a very different number than if I got to do 3/4 of the project. So that is my main concern, and I don't know if this is the best way to do it, and I just wanted to voice that.
If my fellow board members will give me a second, I'll actually read the quadrants to those of y'all that are not here. Zone 1 is Acadian Middle, Paul Bro, Karen Crow, Evangeline, J.W. Falk, Live Oak, Barranco, Northside, Vermillion Conference Center, W.D. Smith, and Central Office. That's one quadrant. That's 1,089,000 square feet. Zone 2 is Lafayette High, Prairie, Montgomery, Woodvale, Alamo, Lafayette Middle, Myrtle Place, J.W. James, Truman Early Childhood, Alice Boucher, La Rosen, Child Nutrition, and Marsh Street Office Annex. That's 1,041,000. Zone 3 takes you to the country. That's Austin, Carencro Heights, Dusson, West Side, El Leo, Scott and Middle, Ridge, Judy's, Burke, and Acadiana High. That's 849,000 square feet. And then the final zone is Como, Bio, Middlebrook, Drexel, Broussard, Youngsville Middle, GT Linden, Milton, Ernest Gallette, STEM, Edgar Martin, Southside, and Broadmoor. And that's 1,000,005. Those are your 4 quadrants.
And Mr. President, those numbers are based with the new facilities or with the existing portables? Is that the new wing number or is that the portable number?
An updated list?
Is that, Mr. Bordelon, does that include the square footage of the new wings that we're building? Oh, this is the square footage at the time that the RFP went out. It's close.
So it's the portable with window units, right? It's not the new units in the wings.
No, it should be the new units in the wings.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lodgley.
Actually,
yes.
Oh,
I did want to mention
somebody else
that the pricing, although a total is provided, the pricing is by zone. So it's not a prorated 1/4 of the total price. Each zone has been priced separately in arriving at the total. So if a particular zone is awarded to one vendor, then that zone has a price tag associated with it. I'm looking at one particular one. 3 of the zones were about 4 million, and the 4th zone was 6 million. And that's based on age of equipment and the amount of the equipment that's in those zones. So I think there's a differentiation. It's not a prorated 1/4. In other words, each zone is priced to come to that total.
I think, Ms. LeBou, that may have answered your question.
Yeah, but if I'm picking zones, I'm going with zone 4. It's got all the newer schools, the newer equipment. I mean, you're going to be able to walk in here and look like you're a better company if your costs are lower, but your costs are going to be lower if you have zone 4. That's just my take on it.
Yeah. I agree with LeBou. I don't agree with this. I'm sorry.
Hey,
go ahead, Dr. Chasso.
Did you say that STEM was in the South Side zone?
STEM is with, correct. STEM is with is zone 4. Como, Bio, Middlebrook, Drexel, Broussard. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know how, but
obviously that needs to be corrected. But Anna, let me respond to you real quick, and then we can wrap it up. You had asked a question, and you were referencing me. Anna, as I said to you on the phone, I'm not asking you to vote for this, not one bit, not at all. Like, I mean that. The exact thing I told you on the phone, I'm not asking you to vote for this one way or the other. All I can do is, if someone asks me, I offer my understanding of it. And it's like, one company's got a limited liability list. We've got an RFP that maybe says we're not supposed to have it. One company says everything should be covered, all covered. Another, which is the same as the first, says that they've saved us plenty of money. And both companies are for competition. They both stated it. So I'd like to have them both work for us, as they clearly do, and work cohesively in other parishes, 4 quadrants, 4 different vendors in East Baton Rouge Parish. I mean, and when it comes to choosing a zone, I think they're all big boys and big girls. As far as us picking, I say let them work it out. They can easily sit with staff, easily, and they sit and decide. They can all look, everybody will know which one will be less work versus more work. And maybe Bernhardt takes the one with the least amount of work. There's got to be 2 that causes the most amount of problems. One take one and the other take the other. And then Bernhardt gives the other 2, which is maybe the newer schools. And if they can't decide, then when they come back, then we will clearly decide for them. But we can easily let staff decide. I'm sure Mr. Bordelon wouldn't have a problem sitting with both companies. Now, that's not even to say this thing is going to pass. It may fail and we're back to the original. So I say let them choose. We don't have to choose.
Ms. Morrison, you have a question?
So I know you'll divide companies. You'll have 2 vendors working on one district. What advantages, disadvantages with that setup you have experienced with that? You know, dividing up the parish, where you're able to work together, you had problems, that kind of thing.
We haven't had an issue working alongside Star, but the pricing was, we proposed for a certain district. We actually came in after them and we were asked to take on that district. Okay. Now, the question I have is, I'll be happy to split up these districts, and I'll take on Star's price since we're so willing to pay more now, because by breaking up 3 divisions go to one and one goes to the other, then it indicates to the contractor that Lafayette Parish School Board is interested in spending more than is necessary. And so in saying that, I'm willing to take, Ms. LeBeau, any district that you want to give me with Star's number. Happy to take it, and we can sit down and we can negotiate terms.
Star, would you like to answer Ms. Morrison's question?
That was very smooth of you, Mr. Bernhardt. Very smooth. Almost didn't catch it.
Rona free. So the school district in East Baton Rouge had 3 contractors. We've got half of the schools. It's divided up by 2 other. The other half is given to 2. When I was terminated, Bernhardt was invited in just recently. It's been less than a year, and they are forced to comply to the fixed cost agreement in that arrangement. We're happy to take on whatever schools. We're not afraid of any of the quadrants. We think that it'd be a little bit unfair if someone just handed us a particular quadrant. Why don't we draw out of a hat? We're okay. It's no problem because you have one contract. You should have one contract for both contractors, and that's according to the RFP. The contract terms ought to be just what's listed in the RFP, and that is not allowing for all these exclusions. And by far, you're going to avoid this $12.5 million capital outlay that's typically everyone looks forward to getting in the construction business. So there's not an issue at all with East Baton Rouge schools. They've renewed on 3 different terms for 5-year periods. So obviously it's working very well. There's no issue or problem. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If there is no more board, is there any more board member comments?
Mr. President?
Mr. Angel?
I'd like to call for a question. I think it's time
Yes,
to vote.
it's. I was going to the vote. I was just making sure there were no more comments. Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. Let's see, where am I at here?
Tommy, I love you, man. I love you. I saw it coming.
I was getting to that, sir. I've been trying to get to that for about an hour now.
I had one more sentence, but I'm gonna keep my mouth closed.
And my fellow board members, if you'll allow, Ms. LeBeau has asked for a 5-minute break after this item, and I will grant that. Motion carries. It passes 5 yes, 4 no. We'll take a 5-minute recess. what that means, gentlemen, it has been 3-1.
Mr. Latchley?
We're going to go ahead and get back to the meeting. The next item that was pulled is 3.9. That was pulled by Mr. Centani. Are you there, sir?
Indeed, I am. Mr. President, I move that, if I can pull this up real quick.
I'm looking for it with you.
I move that the board authorize staff to award the low quote of $25,400 to Calcasieu Mechanical Contractors Incorporated for the GT Linden Elementary Air Handler number 6 replacement in accordance with purchasing procedures and guidelines.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Morrison seconds. Any public comment? 337-521-7018.
Is the gentleman from Star still there, Mr. President?
They're all gone.
Okay.
I have a question.
Let me offer a substitute motion as well.
Okay, let's wait for public comment to expire.
That way the folks can chime in at the same time.
Okay. Would Ms. Mason, would you allow Dr. Chasson to make his substitute motion, or do you want to ask your question first?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think we may have the same question if Dr. Chasson would humor me, because we may arrive at the same substitute motion.
Okay. Dr. Chasson, oh, Ms. Mason, go ahead, Ms. Mason.
Okay. So when does the contract, the one that we just passed, when does that contract begin?
That would.
And my question is referencing whose quadrant is this going to be in?
I don't think they've decided that yet, right?
Well, I'm sure they're
July 1.
now.
The contract, Ms.
July
Mason,
1.
will begin July 1.
So are they going to wait till after July 1 to replace it for free?
Replace.
They're going to draw straws for this quadrant.
This is where the problem begins.
They left saying they had no problem picking quadrants or being assigned quadrants.
That's correct.
Okay. So, Dr. Chasson, you have a substitute motion?
Let me allow Mr. Centani to chime in. Did you have something to say before I go, or what?
I did have a question for Mr. Bordelon. We heard from, I believe, the gentleman from Star who said that this would not need to be replaced because we are, and certainly the conversations we just had indicated that we will not have this limited liability list. So my question is, should we postpone this until the new contracts are in place?
Mr. Bordelon is walking up to the podium, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bordelon.
Hey guys, and in the future, could we get some type of, I guess, camera setup or system for anyone that comes to the podium? I'd like to be able to see them too. I can see everyone else talking, but I can't see them.
It should be set up now. You should be able to see Dr. Chasson.
Okay. Would it be under his public comment?
It's under board. Board comment.
Okay. Well.
Public comment.
When you start talking, Mr. Bordelon, it should work.
Got you.
Could you repeat the question?
Dr. Chasson, could you please repeat the question, or was it Dr. Chasson, who had the question? Mr. Centani? Okay. Mr. Bordelon is up here and he'd like the question.
The question, Mr. Bordelon, is given the discussion we've had over the last 2 hours and the resolution that we reached just now, should we be approving this item or waiting until the contract takes effect?
Mr. Centani, my gut tells me that we should get this replacement moving forward because of the problems we've had in the past and the discomfort that the school and the kids have encountered because of it. That's what my gut tells me. However, I'm going to go with whatever you guys say. I have questions in my head in that Bernhard's proposal states he's covering things, most everything, but he's got a limited liability list. If he's going to cover everything, is he going to have to adjust his proposal? I'm not real sure. I was not in any discussions with them after this.
Well, that's neither here nor there because Mr. Bernhard well stood at the podium and said he is fine with no limited liability list. So
okay, that's fine. So
I will ask Dr. Aguilar's opinion just because this is a school in his district. Are you willing to wait a month and a half, Dr. A?
My personal preference, given that it's $25,000, is that we pull the trigger on this air handler and we ensure that there won't be any discomfort when school opens.
Thank you both.
Dr. Shasso? Your mic's not on, sir.
Must unmuted.
There you go.
Let me quickly say something in hopes that I garner a second. If one of the companies clearly says that we shouldn't be replacing this and that they can fix it, and the other company who had it on their limited liability list, but there's not going to be a limited liability list anymore, then it looks like it's a win-win for that particular, it's an air handler or a chiller, guys?
Air handler.
Air handler. Looks like that's a win-win for that air handler. So at that point, I would assume that we would defer this and both companies will now take this on. And if there seems to be some type of, I guess, disagreement, I would hope that Green Tea Linden zone would be acquired by Star, because they say that it should not be replaced. And if it needs to be replaced, then it will be replaced if they can't fix it at their own cost. I think that's a win-win. So I'd like to make a substitute motion to defer that the board authorize staff to award the low quote of $25,400 to Calcasieu Mechanical Contractors Incorporated for GT Linden Elementary Air Handler number 6 replacement in accordance with purchasing procedures and guidelines.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mrs. Santani is the second. I will go ahead and open the substitute motion up for public comment. 337-521-7018. There seems to be no public comment. Do we have any board member comment on this substitute motion?
Mr. President, Kate LeBou.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I think this needs to be part of a contract. So when we go to the negotiating table, whoever's going to take on this air handler is going to be part of their contract. And number two, I think it was Kyle that just spoke. Mr. Bordelon said, they have a limited liability list, and now we just got a verbal from somebody at a podium. I know I'm a lawyer. I don't think minutes in a meeting and verbals in a meeting are sufficient to say, now we no longer have a limited liability list. I think we all need to remember the golden rule, which is if it's not in writing, it never happens. And we need to make sure that if anything that you want or you're unhappy with isn't in that contract, that everybody understands. You can't get up here and complain about the fact that it was done a different way. So I just want to make sure that, yes, verbals are great, but we don't operate on verbals, and we have got to make sure anything that you want in that contract, including this air handler, is put in a contract. Thank you.
Thank you. We did have a public comment call come in. I'm going to go ahead and allow that person to speak now.
Miss, good evening. This is the Lafayette Parish public comment line. Please note you will have 3 minutes. Also, please remember this is your opportunity for comments, not questions. Please begin by stating your name.
Ginger Richard.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Go ahead, Ms. Richard. Hi, this is Ginger Richard, principal of Green Tea Linden Elementary School. I am just calling. I appreciate all the discussion regarding the HVAC system at Green Tea Linden. However, I'm asking the board to please reconsidering the deferring of the motion at hand. We have had quite a bit of problems. This is going to be my 5th year at Green Tea Linden, and we have had to stop instruction quite a bit. We have had Bernhard at our school daily, working in the old section of the building. We are moving children out of the classrooms with temps between 78 and 82 degrees in the classrooms. So I am please asking that you reconsider deferring this item.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other board member comments?
Hey, really quickly, let me say something, because at least I'm aware. I was at Northside quite often whenever the air conditioning units and everything were being put in for the gymnasium and the whole 9 yards. And it only takes a month after something is decided for that air handler to be put in properly. And we haven't had kids in there for 2 months, and they won't be in there for the next 3. I'm hoping to feel pretty confident. I feel pretty confident that this should be included with no limited liability. And another company that says, I agree with Ms. LeBou, it should be included in the contract. But we've got 2 companies, one that's not going to have a list, hopefully going forward, and one that says this should not be on the list in the first place and can be maintained properly. So I feel pretty confident in both those companies. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Chasson. Any other board member comment before Mr. Angel? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a comment and a question.
Go ahead, sir.
First of all, my comment, Mr. President, I respectfully disagree with my colleague. In my 75 years of existence, a lot has happened that wasn't written down, and I'm happy for that. My question to Dr. Aguilar is, Doc, would you reiterate your position on this motion?
Yes, sir.
Unmute Dr. Aguilar.
So we just heard from the principal of GT Linden. She is asking for the board to budget the necessary money so that this air handler can be replaced. They've been working on this piece of equipment for quite a long time. And my guess is it's still working, but there is no additional life expectancy for this device. So the decision was made to bring this to the board for replacement. I urge you to follow the wishes of the principal and let's fix this problem irregardless of any contract that we sign with Starr or Bernhardt.
Thank you.
Is that it, Mr. Angel?
Yes, sir.
Any other board member comment before we go to the vote on the substitute motion?
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Broussard.
The motion on the floor is to defer. And what happens, the bid process came out to where Kakashi was getting to work. What happens at the end when it's awarded to either Bernhardt or Starr and they not get the job that they wanted to bid for? Is that something we'll have to battle for in months to come? They came through the bid process, RFP, as required, and they won the bid. So that's a question.
This is a quote process and not a bid process, where my understanding is all we did was get 3 quotes, and we go with the low quote.
So that's evidently how Calcasieu got it. Any other board member questions or comments? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote on the substitute motion. The motion fails, 2 for, 6 against, 1 abstain. We will now go back to the original motion that the board authorize staff to award the low quote of $25,400 to Calcasieu Mechanical Contractors Incorporated for the GT Linden Elementary Air Handler number 6 replacement in accordance with purchasing procedures and guidelines.
I'll second.
I think we already had.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, we just going back to the original motion. Thank you, Ms. Morrison.
You had already seconded it.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Santani. Okay.
I'll ask any public comment, then board member comment before we go to the vote. On the original motion, 337-521-7018. There is no public comment. Do we have any board member comment before we go to the vote?
Yes, sir, Mr. Latchley.
Dr. Chasson?
Hey, guys, really quickly, everybody give me your attention. I at least want to change one person's mind. I'm okay with losing, just at least one person's mind. You've got two companies. One says, hey, that air handler that was on the list, we won't have that list anymore. We'll take care of it. Granted, they said it, but they said it publicly, so you don't have to replace it. They'll take care of it from this point. We have to hold them to the negotiating table. You got another company who says, don't replace it at all. That was supposed to be a part of the original RFP, which means on both, in both scenarios, they replace it. You don't have to replace this. Let someone else replace it per the original RFP 8 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years with the renewal, and it currently being up right now. Let someone else replace it. Thanks.
Any other board member comment before I go to the vote?
Mr. President, just that I could say a lot of things publicly, but we don't have a contract. The existing contract that we have until the end of June, it's not covered under that contract. So if we have to weigh what a principal has advised is a daily issue and just hope that we're able to get it done between the time we negotiate these contracts that we don't know what's going to be in them and the beginning of school, and hope that this thing gets replaced for free. Just want to point that out.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other board member comment?
Yes, this can be replaced on June 30th and be ready for July 31st, well before kids come. And we're not even sure if kids will be coming on said August start dates. So I respect what the principal is asking. Of course, we're going to cover the air conditioning problems, but I would tend to go with the air conditioning experts versus the principal. Again, I want to fix it. That's not the problem. Just let the experts, one will replace it, the other says you don't have to replace it. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any other board member comment? Madam Secretary, I call for the vote. Motion carries 6-4, 2 against, 1 abstain. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, 3.19. Dr. Aguilar.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to offer I'd like to offer a motion that we defer item 3.19 for consideration at the June regular board meeting after the superintendent presents the reorganization plan to the executive committee.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? I don't think we have a second, Dr. Aguilar. Do we have another motion on the floor?
Mr. President,
Mr. Centani.
I move that the board approves the proposed plan of reorganization of staff and changes in job descriptions related thereto as attached to this agenda item to become effective June 1st, 2020.
We have a motion from Mr. Centani. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Chasson. I'll open the floor up for public comment. 337-521-7018. We have a call coming in.
Hi, good evening. This is the Lafayette Parish public comment line. Please note that you will have 3 minutes. Also, please remember this is your opportunity for comments, not questions. Please go ahead and state your name.
Brian Blackwell.
You may begin.
Good evening. By way of introduction, my name is Brian Blackwell. I'm an attorney in Baton Rouge, and I've been practicing in the field of representing employees in employment matters for a little more than 30 years now. I have, I know several of the people that are on the board there, and wanted to bring to your attention several issues with respect to this proposed elimination of positions primarily. One is that several of these positions, including the position of Director of Human Resources, are positions that are governed by particular state law that would not permit the elimination of that position without the payment of the employee in the position through the contract term. There's no provision under which you can cancel a administrative contract during the term of the years without cause, and that's what's being done here. I also want to call to the board's attention that it wasn't part of the motion, but it's part of what's on the agenda is the authorization of the superintendent to implement a RIF, quote, if necessary. And I don't believe that complies with either state law or the board's policy on reductions in force or reductions in personnel. And in line with what Dr. Aguilar said, I think this is an unusual time to be doing this in the middle of a fiscal year, to become effective, a month before the end of the fiscal year. And I would suggest to you that in order to avoid litigation about this matter, that it be deferred until you're able to get people in that can comment on it in person, and also have your executive committee review the matter. Be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Are there any board member questions for the caller?
No, sir. It's a comment section. It's not for questions.
Sir. Thank you. We thank you for your call, sir. Any other public comment? 337-521-7018.
While we're waiting on another call, what attorneys are currently on our call right now? Still, or currently?
I am.
Ms. Boudreaux.
Thank you.
We seem to
5
have
seconds.
no other public comment due to call in. Go ahead, Dr. Chasson, if you have a question.
Oh,
It's done.
It's done.
There's no calls.
Dr. Chasson?
No, sir. I didn't have a question. That was my question for Ms. Boudreaux while we were waiting. I want to know who was still on here.
Okay. Any other board member comment on this agenda item?
I have a couple of questions, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Mr. Centani.
I have a request, and then I also have a question. So my request, Ms. Trosclair, would you please prepare a report or an analysis of the impact of moving the gifted and talented program manager from a pay grade 6 to a pay grade 7? And I'll explain my concern to you. I spent a little time with Ms. Gardner. We went through some math of what the daily rate of pay would be for a teacher with the relevant experience in the gifted classroom in order to qualify for the program manager position. And the spread in payment came out to about $10 a day for a 5-year teacher. I think it was around $6 or $7 a day for a teacher with 10 years experience, and I think $3 or $4 a day for a teacher with 15 years experience. And obviously the extra 21 days that this person would be working would make their overall annual salary higher. But I'm concerned as always about the salary compression that we experience when a teacher leaves the classroom to be in a leadership position. I want to make sure that we are compensating this person at a level where we will attract talent to be the leader of our gifted and talented program. So I just would like a little report on that next month, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so my actual question was, I think this is the 3rd or 4th reorganization that since I've been on the board. I don't believe I'm pretty confident we've already had one in the middle of the year, including the director of HR. Correct. Back in 2015. Ms. Boudreaux, you were our attorney then. Did we experience any litigation or any issue with legality in accordance with that reorganization?
No, sir, you did not. And you are correct that you have been part of several. This district has done several of these in the past that are not unlike this one.
In your experience as an educational attorney in Louisiana, do you have an example of a reorganization that may have experienced issues with legality as far as litigation goes?
I can't say that that I can think of one off the top of my head. Everyone is different. This one involves, this is a substantial reorganization, many positions involved. There's lots of detail, which other reorganizations in other districts would be quite similar or not. We haven't, in my recollection or experience, have anything like that. I'll say that we have reviewed this. It's not unlike others that we've been involved in or assisted with, and we don't see any legal concerns with it.
Thank you very much.
Any other board member comment before we go to the vote?
Mr. Latulet.
Ms. LeBeau?
Kate LeBeau. Can I ask a question of the attorney as well, Danielle? Our contracts allow for these types of when there is a reorganization, elimination of a position, they allow you to they trump basically the law that otherwise would require you to buy somebody out of their position. We have language in there specifically that covers a situation in which the contract would terminate if a position was eliminated or changed, correct?
The language in the contracts address this. I will say, as I often do here, and especially with Mr. Blackwell on the meeting, he would likely disagree with almost anything I'm going to say right now. So, not necessarily going to engage in legal.
But we
advice and interpretation here. That's not what you want me to do. I guarantee you. Right. But the language in the contract, it says if the position's abolished, the contract is terminated. it does cover this situation.
Okay, so we do have
I believe it
in a contract that
addresses this.
Okay, and that was all my questions were. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBeau. Do we have any other board member comments or questions? Dr. Aguilar?
Board members, what is unusual in this case is that we just received notice of this reorganization plan some 48 hours ago, Monday afternoon at about 5:30. I'm not even sure that all of the parties involved in this reorg plan have had an opportunity to discuss job description changes with the superintendent. I just do not understand the urgency in moving forward without having some public discussion about whether or not this reorganization plan moves this district forward. And I assume that it will, but we haven't heard from the superintendent. We haven't heard any reason why we are reducing the gifted supervisor's job duties by some 10 days per year, how that is going to improve gifted education. We haven't discussed how changing the HR director for the Lafayette Parish school system, because we're changing the expected job description, advances the Lafayette Parish school system. I urge you to reject this motion and defer this until such time as we can have some public discourse about this plan. And if it has value and merit, I wholeheartedly would endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar. Do we have any other board member comment before I go to vote?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Shasso?
Dr. Aguilar, how many reorgs did you have whenever you were in superintendent?
I remember one for sure that took place. And part of the reason for the reorg was because the board asked me to cut central office staff. It's another reason for us to be cautious about what we're doing here. We just went through the budget process. All of these positions are currently in next year's budget. And we're asking the board to grant permission to make all of these changes on June 1, just a month before the fiscal year opens. If some of these individuals are moving their pay grade and they're changing the number of days assigned for work duties, some of these employees are going to lose 1 month's pay because of the way we pay employees. Waiting until July 1 for implementation would be, for payroll purposes and employee benefits, would be the fairest thing to do.
Doc, that's some extreme misrepresentation right there. You and I both know that anytime you did a reorg and subsequently people were moved out or moved in, that no one missed the paycheck. Like, can anybody like that? See, stuff like that really bothers me, guys. Miss Trosclair or Miss Gardner or someone, is someone going to miss a paycheck if there's a reorg?
So, Dr. Shassal, I can talk to that. So, if the reorg is voted to go through and it is effective June 1st, let's just use an example of a 203-day employee. If the 203-day employee, the contract for that person would end on June 10th. So that person would lose 8 days of pay because the contract would be null and void as of the last day of May. So what would happen is, we would readjust those 8 days off of the amount that person has banked. So currently they bank money, a 203 employee, so we can get a steady check through June, July, and August. So all we would do was take those 8 days out, recalculate the amount owed to them, and we would steadily equal their check for June, July, and August, so they would have a steady check coming in for the summer.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure, I think I'd spoken with Mr. Guidry about that because someone had raised that up with one of Dr. Aguilar's reorg, and they had informed me that no one missed a check. I'm pretty sure we would hear from someone if they were reorg, if they missed a whole check. I'm pretty sure we'd hear from somebody. And then as well, let me make a comment specifically for Dr. Aguilar. To have a reorg that you yourself had asked us for previously, and we voted on it unanimously, even when the first board initially got in, because I remember Justin Centani talking with me that, man, we're doing a reorg, and boy, he had just gotten in there, and they voted for it unanimously, and we hadn't had any discussions. We just trusted you, Dr. Aguilar. There were no discussions about it. You proposed a reorg, and we trusted that you would do the right thing. So to then state that to protect one of your friends that I guess you're assuming may get reorged somewhat bothers me, and I take offense to that.
Any other board member comments or questions?
Comment? I have a comment.
Ms. Morrison?
Ms. Troxclair, when you're doing your reorganizational chart, you confer and communicate with your department heads and get their input on what's working, what's not working, and that is implemented in your decisions when you recreate your org chart. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I've spent the year as interim observing, speaking with senior level staff, and considering a phase one reorg of the departments that we felt closely, directly impact teaching and learning. And we've spent countless hours considering all of those things. I take the responsibility to move our district forward and to improve departments very seriously. My contract with you all, the board, gives me that authority, and I feel that if that authority is given to me in that contract, that means it's important to you as a board that we work and we evaluate and reevaluate and continue to make changes, reassignments, reorganization, whatever it is that you want to call it, in an effort to improve efficiency and effectiveness to better serve our students, our employees. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. LeBeau, you had a question?
Oh, did I hit the wrong button? Hold on. That was going to be my question: is how long did you spend putting this together, and did you collaborate with others? So, but I know that you did, and I know that this has been a great effort, and I know that, you know, like you said, effectiveness and efficiency is the goal. And we can't run this well and run it like a business if we don't have a leader who's willing to, you know, do those changes. So, so that was my question. Mary asked my question, and I just want to reiterate that thank you for putting the effort in.
Got you covered, Kate.
Thank you. Any other board member comment before we go to vote? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. The motion carries 6-4, 2 against, 1 abstain. Final item on the agenda, 3.20. Dr. Aguilar.
I didn't pull that. Oh, that was me, Mr. President.
I'm sorry.
I move that the board approves revisions to policy CCA top tier organizational chart.
We have a motion from Mrs. Centani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Morrison seconds. I will call for public comment at 337-521-7018. The motion is that the board approves revision to policy CCA, top tier organizational chart. We are waiting on public comment.
While we wait on public comment, Mr. President, can I ask our attorney a question?
You sure can, sir.
Ms. Boudreaux, are we required to have this policy?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get. I don't believe so. I found my notes several years ago. I recommended that the policy be eliminated, so I'm not sure really. It's kind of the first page of your organizational chart.
Please, please report back on that at some point in time.
I'm not sure why it's still here at all, to be honest. So no, I don't. somebody must have still wanted it. That is, I guess what I'm saying. I've recommended that it be eliminated, but somehow it's still here.
Well, please recommend again next month if it should still be eliminated.
Okay.
We have no public comment. Do we have any board member comment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. While we're waiting for the vote, Mr. Centani, may I once again tell you you were right. You said it would be a 3-hour meeting. You only missed it by 4 minutes.
Choo! I'm getting pretty good at this.
You're getting good. Could you recommend a 45-minute meeting?
I will do my best, sir.
Thank you.
My hair will be a little longer. I don't know why your hair's not growing back in yet.
I have my own clippers.
This is 3.5 weeks worth of growth right here, man.
Well, that'd take me about 4 months to get where you at. I never voted. I did. Motion carries 8-4, 1 against. That is our agenda for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good job. Good job, Mr. President.
Y'all all be safe, and we'll see y'all next month. Or some of y'all on the 27th. Don't forget, we